Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 5, episode 78 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid. I am Fetterman. That is Jonathan Lidskin. Jonathan, how are you doing tonight?
Well, it is search season, so I am doing great.
It is also MLB Fantasy Draft Night, so we're working on that too. But we are thrilled to be joined by Curry Hicks Sage, the host and the creator of Search Season. Sage, how you doing tonight?
Gentlemen, I'm exhausted. We're really in the middle of the run, and but you just gotta keep going. It's that time of year. You're running on fumes, and the show is kind of doing really well, and always here to promote it, get whatever reps I can with other shows, and yeah, I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Great to have you on. Jonathan, I'm going to go to you first because I know that you have kind of something that you want Sage to get into here.
Yeah, so I know we don't have a ton of time here. We don't have
all give you an hour, guys. What's
Your shows are usually 4 hours. That's what I meant.
Listen, can't give everybody a 4-hour Sage experience, you know?
I'm not saying I expected that. I'm just saying we don't have 10 years here.
Sure.
Well, to get right into it, there has been sort of a wave this year of NBA assistants being hired for college jobs. And I know part of that is NIL, but is this something that you saw coming, and is it a trend you expect to continue?
Yes and yes. I talked about it at the outset of this search season, kind of like mid-February. I said I foresee it being more common. At the time, I was kind of celebrating it but only if it was leveraged properly. And I think the challenge is that for a lot of ADs, they don't necessarily know who's good on an NBA bench. And I think what we saw initially was some kind of clear, very successful sort of anointed guys who've been head coaches in the G League or elsewhere. Now it feels like the last couple of days with the Radford and today's inexplicable Iona news, we're just sort of hiring. Look, I'd be remiss if I didn't note that I'm not plugged in the NBA in deep ways. If I talk to 150 college sources a week, I talk to 4 NBA sources a week. So I should be very clear on that. But I did. First of all, you don't need as many NBA sources because there's only 32 teams. But secondly, I did seek to, get input on this at the outset and got like 6-8 names of people who were kind of interested in their backstories. Now there's just people coming out of nowhere, and it's hard to know who's done what, how legit they are. And I think, there's a clear hierarchy within NBA circles, and a lot of these NBA assistants, there's, player personnel guys, and there's, 7, 8, 9 assistants on the bench and behind the bench. And so to know which one of them is quite literally maybe calling the plays and which is kind of chilling in the background, it can be difficult if you're not really plugged in the NBA. So I think I support the, good coaches at any level. And if you find the right one, great. But I think the kind of reflexive assumption that perhaps undergirds some of these hires that NBA, therefore good, is going to be shown to be bad logic in time. So there will be some good ones, there will be some bad ones. And I think it's all about finding the right ones. And I don't always trust collegiate administrators to make that decision, particularly when they don't have a whole lot of time.
Yeah, it goes back to something that I've heard you say for years. It's just like hire the guys that win. Like that's the easiest way to know if someone is a good coach is whether they have won games as a head coach before. Now,
at least relative to the level and to who's taken the job before and after them.
Yes. And if you just look at these NBA assistants, we have no evidence of any of that. That doesn't mean they're all bad coaches, but it also most certainly doesn't mean they're all good coaches. And I think that's the key that you get to. There's a lot more variance with this, I feel.
Well, the guy at Florida State, like Luke Laux, I mean, I think he was a head G League coach and won. I think
G League is also a little bit different because like you're managing like a roster that's changing every day.
It is, but I mean, you could argue in the modern college basketball that's probably a good thing. But also, I'm just saying, if you've been on a bench and led a thing, I think there's value in that.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
I agree. Absolutely. The first kind of job that I actually want to ask about here is the one that's been the driver of all the news this cycle. It would be Indiana.
What do you think? All the news, but fair enough.
It's driving the most news, the most potent news comes from Indiana in this cycle. It is the job that I think the most people care about. Mm-hmm. Maybe not in certain places, but just on a national scale. What would you say is the most likely outcome? What is it kind of down to at this point?
It's so interesting when you ask a question like that, because I'll chase that kind of all day or wherever I have the time to, and over the weekends, whatever. And yet the answer changes a lot throughout the day, and you have to be really mindful of what's a smokescreen and what's not. As of an hour or two ago, I was kind of maybe half an hour ago, for the first time, I had a strong, I don't want to call it strong, an inclination that DeVries from West Virginia could be in the mix there. I can't explain all the reasons I felt that because I don't want to burn sources, but I don't think it's Brunell. Sounds like he's signing an extension. Maybe it already went down today. I don't know. I heard about it yesterday. Excuse me. I think McCollum is probably still a little bit in that mix, and that's more real than I thought it was when it first surfaced. I don't see them doing Beard or Wade. And what was the other name that kind of got thrown around? I can't even remember right now. There was, I don't know, but I think DeVries may be in the picture there, and that's like as of an hour ago. And then interestingly, the coaching changes account tweeted that as well, and they're a tricky one for those of your listeners. I'll probably talk about it on my show tonight. They are often like 1 for every 5. 4 are just totally incorrect. My understanding of that account is it's a lot of ex-coaches, many of whom are not in the sport anymore. So their sources tend to vary. The veracity of their sources varies very widely. They've kind of even acknowledged this by their own admission. At times they get things wrong all the time. They don't really care, which is fine. But you just have to be very careful when you're looking at their stuff, because whereas many accounts, it's like they're total cranks. Other accounts, they're totally legit. These guys are somewhere in the middle, and often, they said something else today about the Northwestern search that was just wrong. But then on this point, I was like, you know what? I started connecting some dots, and I was like, that actually, I might be right. That might be right about DeVries. That's very new. Like that's in the last hour, but and not that it hasn't been done for a while, but that there's just a lot there if you look at some things that make a lot of sense and gets a little bit to the business of this stuff. And that's all I'll say for now.
Okay.
So just to kind of connect some dots here, if DeVries is in the mix at Indiana, if he were to take that job, does that make McCollum like the default answer at Iowa, or are there other guys that would be in the mix for that job as well?
I've had several sources today, some of whom I don't know, and usually that's an indicator of like it's someone who is trying to drive this home. They usually want to tip you off because they want to they want me to make their point and they can't make it. But what they've said is that McCollum is like hung up on NIL figures with Iowa. That's also why DeVries apparently does not want to go to Iowa. Excuse me, guys. Long week. And I believe that they'll find a way to get there. And it may have even been done for all I know. Having said that, wouldn't shock me if the two people we're talking about flipped and each got the opposite job of what we're talking about. I mean, there's a lot that can change. But sorry, what was the original question?
It was just if there was anyone else in the mix besides those two, because that's really all.
At Iowa?
Yeah.
I mean, I know like there was always a lot of chatter that Steve Forbes wanted it. Then I heard like Chris Jans may be interested, but his buyout's really, really high, and Iowa doesn't have money, so they're not going to do it. One of the things you start realizing when you get to the terms of these things is a lot of the field is sort of defined based on just dollars and cents, both in terms of what they're able to offer the new coach as well as an NIL package, and then what the coach is owed at his existing employer. And so once you factor that in, then you can start looking at the field more clearly. And in this case, like that's why I just don't see Jans. Jans is very good, but they're not going to pay $8 million or whatever it is to buy him out.
All right. Yeah. So there was a lot of buzz about Will Wade at NC State. Feels like that's kind of, I haven't heard as much of it over the last few days. What do you think is the current status on that? And if it's not him, do you think there's anybody else that stands out in Raleigh?
I think it may well be him right now, but that he probably wants something else if he can get it. Not that he's like, oh, I don't want to be at NC State, but if something else emerged, he might go chase it, right? And so when the Brunell stuff was floating around about Brunell to Indiana, which I never really bought. Excuse me, guys. It's not you, I swear. And yeah, sorry. What was I saying? If you guys got to realize, I'm going on like 5 hours of sleep a night because of this.
No, we understand this time of year.
I'm a person with a regular life outside this, but not apparently this month. So what was the question?
We were talking about Wade and NC State.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it is kind of real. But let's say Brunell had gone to Indiana, then Wade would have preferred, I think, to be at Clemson, which is his alma mater. Let's say Beard had moved somewhere. Will would have easily slotted in at Ole Miss, provided you don't believe the rumors of the SEC kind of blackballing him, which may in fact have a more than a kernel of truth to it. But there's also there's kind of the second turn of the carousel, which after these first gigs are filled. When you see high major guys move, like what if Texas A&M opens? What if Oklahoma opens? I could see him at those places too. And so
where would Buzz go?
He just wants to leave, period.
Interesting.
So, and he gets an itch every 5 to 7 years.
Very Musselman-ish.
Very Musselman-ish, 100%.
That guy's a generational job hopper.
Yeah, and so where he would go, I mean, I think a lot of that probably hinges on what he does this weekend, whether people admit it or not. I think that Buzz making the Sweet 16 and having a couple fun press conferences when everybody's finally tuned in could help him get, convince a new ambitious president at, I'm trying to think where, because there's just not that many things open is one of the challenges. But yeah, I think he'd be looking hot.
Okay. Where were? Oh yeah, you were kind of talking about the whole Wade thing and the second part of the carousel on the NC State point.
Yeah, just that I think if NC State, if he loses on Thursday or Friday or whenever he's playing, and he's not named as the NC State coach the next morning, I do mean the next morning, maybe the next afternoon, then NC State's in trouble.
Do you think NC State has like names for a sort of backup plan?
Would like Takeo Siddle be an option?
I find that unlikely just because typically schools don't go back to what they had before, and Siddle was assistant at the same was now at the same school as Keats was at. So
forgot about that part.
But I could see like Huss
at High Point. Yeah.
I could see Huss. I could see Richard Pitino if number of things break at Nova.
Do you think Richard Pitino like really wants out at New Mexico?
Yes. No. So.
Okay. And you mentioned Villanova. Do you think he really has a chance to get that job?
Yes.
Is he near the top of that list?
I think one of the challenges of that list is that there's a perception that Odom's already locked in at Virginia. Collins has a really good deal and a long-term sort of deal, and they're never going to let him go at Northwestern. Like, they would never want to let him go at Northwestern. So I could see Pitino slotting in there. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it's kind of.
I don't think he's number 1 or 2, but there's only so many names. Now, look, I think Nova, to be clear, is doing a very thorough, probably longer search than many were expecting. I don't think they've got their guy at all, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, Chris Collins makes a lot of sense there." If that's who they wanted, they could have announced it today, right? Provided he wanted it as well. By not doing that, I think it means they're taking their time. They're looking at a lot of different names. They have a team sort of still playing right now, so I think that gives them a little, in the whatever that the crown is. So I think that they are taking a long look at the field, and that could prove beneficial or it could hurt them, depending on, if they've targeted one person, and that, let's say they were targeting Ryan Odom, but then Odom goes to Virginia and they get in a bidding war. Like, there's a lot that could happen at Nova, a lot, in ways that I don't foresee. Because you got to remember also, Virginia basically has known they're doing this for several months. So it changes the dynamics of how a search is conducted.
Yes. There was I think someone said Peichel could be involved at Villanova.
I think that's totally made up. I just heard it today. But again, there's other names that are being vetted that I can say are, less prominent than Peichel.
Interesting. So with Villanova there, do you think it's going to end up Odom at Virginia?
I did until today.
Okay.
And I would put it still probably slightly above 50%. I had a couple people say he's really still in the mix at Nova, and I believe them. I still, gun to my head, sort of apply the Occam's razor. Simplest explanation is usually the right one. So Virginia has always made the most sense. He's from there. He grew up in Charlottesville. He was a ball boy there. His dad was an assistant coach there. He, beat them in that famous 116 game. I just think Virginia makes too much sense. But, some people say he wants to be in a league that, where basketball is the whole focus, and you never know. That is a guy who feels like that's the place for him. On paper, not based on sourcing. You just look at, his who he is, and it makes sense.
Kind of circling back on some Wade stuff here, not specifically with him, but in terms of Texas, do we know a couple different things? One, do we know what Terry would have to do in this tournament to keep his job? And who Texas could have their eyes set on besides Wade?
I don't really think they're going to pursue Wade.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a camp of donors evidently there so if you've been listening to the show, we've had a really smart Texas kid who's come on a few times, really plugged in there.
I've heard him.
He's made a lot of really original points, some of which I'd never considered before. But one of the things is, if the SEC is at all skittish about Wade, that doesn't help him. You could also say, look, it doesn't matter. They have so much money, they can just do what they want. So I think you can't discount the possibility of Wade, but he may just try to go sexier. That's what he's done on other hires. And I know people think Will Wade is sexy as a pick, and I kind of agree. But when I say what Kentucky could, or excuse me, what Texas can do, like they can poach a sitting. If Todd Golden won the national championship, they could poach him if they wanted to. The money is there, and so I think that like they're just gonna. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about Brad Underwood. I wouldn't discount Wade, but I think it's hardly. I would put it hardly at above 15% chance of happening, but then again, I wouldn't really put any above 20 or 25. So, there's been Sean Miller talk, there's been Will Wade talk, there's been Royal Ivy talk from Kevin Durant's camp. So we don't know what's going to happen. If Rodney loses this week, I think they'll announce it, and within 24 hours, they'll have a hire. That's how Del Conte rolls, and they'll find a prominent name.
They I know for baseball, they hired the A&M coach.
Yep.
If Buzz makes the Sweet 16, do you think that's possible?
It would be wild. I don't know. Repeat the question.
It was the question was literally, do you think they would consider, or like would it be possible if Buzz like made a run this tournament for that to be the sexy hire?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they did it with the baseball coach, as you said. I think it's very, very possible. Yeah. But there is like Buzz is a different cup of tea for Austin than he is in College Station. And I don't know that they'll have that appetite. But yeah, like if Buzz is a buzzy name, no pun intended, I could 100% see it. I just wouldn't put it at a super high likelihood.
So before, Sam and I move on to some of the more mid-major jobs, do you think there could possibly be any surprise retirements this year? We've had some over the last couple of years.
There's always some. I feel like Dana Altman put those rumors to rest recently with some sort of statement somebody referred me to, which I hadn't seen because I was thinking it might be him. I always wonder about Bill Self.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me if he went to Texas. Like, neither of those outcomes likely. I'm just saying, maybe he wants something new. Who else could retire? I think Izzo's probably not going to. I mean, who else is kind of in that camp?
I mean, a lot of them have already retired at this point.
Yeah.
Like Mark Few is not at that point yet.
Probably not.
Probably like 3 or 4 years, I would think.
Yeah, sounds right.
And they already have a coach in waiting. Brian Michelson.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like they named him coach in waiting over the offseason. Like he would have to leave probably for that tag to be taken off. That's wild.
Lloyd. Yeah.
Because Lloyd was the coach in waiting there, I think. For a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of any others that would retire. I mean, Scott Davenport retired. Fran Dunphy retired. Those are like two of the mid-major guys. Campy probably has some more time. He's only like 68. He's not that old for an old coach.
I just don't.
He also just loves basketball.
There's somebody I'm not thinking of, I'm sure. Like there will be one or two for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like if like St. John's wins the national title, does Rick consider?
No. Have you seen him? He just looks like he's loving it too much.
Exactly.
That guy will coach forever.
Yeah.
He could coach till he's 95.
Totally.
And still be really good.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any chance Barnes retires?
Yeah, I had heard that a while ago, and then apparently he's saying he's not, but I could definitely see that.
Yeah, those would be the names that come to mind. So now moving on to some mid-major jobs. Jonathan, are there any that you want to start with?
I was gonna say the Ivy League because I know you'll be super interested in those.
So
yeah, I believe Kevin Hovde has already been hired at Columbia.
Kevin Hovde.
from Florida. He's their offensive coordinator.
Florida.
Okay.
I believe that's already done. I bet you it'll be interesting as to timing, because he's obviously in the tournament and going to make a deep run. And, I bet you he'll sort of try to do both jobs for a little bit, and they'll formally announce him after Florida's knocked out. But it's not hard to announce that one if the person wasn't coaching right now. And Hovde was an assistant there under Kyle Smith, is very well liked by donors there. It's kind of, I think, always been him, and they just, pretended that it could have been others. But I think it's his job to lose.
All right. So, and then Penn.
And then Penn, I think.
Do you think Langle is going to want to take that?
Well, I think more so than he would have a week and a half ago, because it doesn't appear St. Joe's is going to open. So if you just think about it from a, alum, coach under Dunphy, I think there, and Temple, from a high academic school now, is from Philadelphia, families in Philadelphia. There's a lot to like there. However, having said that, I think that he has a very good situation in Hamilton, New York, and it's not something you just walk away from for a job in the Ivy. And there's actually coaching changes, I think, was probably directionally correct on this one today too. But there's a sense that maybe Penn's not that committed to being really good. And I think going into that search, there's a lot of questions around what the sort of existential questions around Ivy League basketball circles right now that are being hashed out mostly kind of in hushed tones. And it really gets to the core of what is Ivy League basketball in 2025. There's some reports of schools having had challenges from the league in terms of implementing NIL. There are obviously a spate of transfers out of the league. Danny Wolf, the most high profile of them. And I say all this because I think that Penn, whether it even realized this or not, had an opportunity to kind of signal to the marketplace that they were open to not fucking around, so to speak. And you can curse on here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, and I noted the coaching change thing, it sounds like, and I've kind of heard similar, they're not looking to break the bank here. And that's why I think if you're Langle, I think you kind of like, it's not a job you run to at all. And I don't think that they're looking to pay the level that it would take to get someone of that caliber, particularly someone who's if you're an established Division I head coach with multiple NCAA tournament appearances, I think Penn has to make that really attractive. And everything I'm hearing about what Penn is seeking in the job is making it seem like kind of a middle of the pack Ivy League job, which maybe isn't surprising, but there was a time where Penn, and I think some of its fans and supporters, and there's a lot of people who talk Penn to me, it's a place that, because of its success, sort of 7 to 27 years ago, right? Like, it was very big time in the Ivy, sort of before you guys were into this stuff. And a lot of the people still want it to be that. They had an opportunity here to get back to perennial top 2 status and alongside Princeton, which was sort of the natural order of things forever until a little less than 15 years ago, which isn't that long in Ivy League time, where things move a little slower. So I think that, it doesn't appear that Penn is interested in, obviously they want to be competitive. It's not like they don't care. It just doesn't seem like at this point in time they're looking to really distance themselves from the rest of the Ivy League pack. And historically, there have always been Ivy League programs who have kind of moments in time where they decide to do it, to go all in. Harvard hadn't been to the tournament since 1946, when a number of donors sort of got together and got Tommy Amaker and were like, we're going to be a thing now. They did that. And if you look at Harvard's run, it kind of comes, I can't remember all the years, but 2013,
12, 13, 14.
Yeah. And then like probably into 17 or 18, they had some teams, right?
Yeah.
Then if you look, Yale sees that and catches up. It's a copycat league, like it's a copycat industry. So Yale catches up, does their own thing, and they get really good. And James Jones, a lot of his titles came later in his career, in no small part because of that. And I was sort of the mind that Penn would want to get back to its reign of success from the Dunphy years.
We can't really hear you. You're
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
All right. So what was the last thing you heard?
You were like, Penn doesn't Penn wants to get back. Penn doesn't.
Well, yeah, I had thought that a change in coach prevents a theoretical opportunity to get back to your glory days a bit, and especially in a league like that where you can do some things resources wise that show you're really committed to distancing yourself if you want. There are like weird things in the Ivy League of kind of professional niceties, whatever, where you kind of do it quietly. But the reality is that it doesn't seem, from everything I've heard, that they are interested in using this search as an opportunity to reestablish their dominance in that league that they had 15 or 20 years ago. And that means that the candidates, listen, Fran McCaffrey's name has been thrown around. He's an alum, would reportedly want it. I think Andy Toole at Robert Morris will seek it. He's an alum. John Krikorian at Christopher Newport, who won a national championship in D3, is an alum. Dave Klatsky.
Short King.
Dave Klatsky, who's an alum of there and who's dominant, is the number one team in the country right now at NYU. Made the Final Four. He's a name. So a bunch of names, and I'm sure there's some dark horses that I haven't even heard about. But I don't have a real strong inclination as to precisely which direction they'd go in.
I think I think any of those four would be like a really, really good hire, and like would give them a chance to be very, very good in the Ivy League. It's just that, like,
I would say John Landry Kosmalski at Swarthmore too would be a really good hire.
Yeah, he's like I would think if McKillop doesn't get if Davidson struggles again next year and McKillop is gone, then you have to hire Kosmalski at Davidson.
I don't know that they would do that. I think they should do that. That's a smart person's thought. With all this Steph Curry money and whatnot, like, I don't know. Maybe that's all the more reason to bring a guy like that in. But I never would assume that an A10 school is going to poach a D3 guy, even if he's an alum and he's as good as Landry has been, because it's just pretty outside the box. And these are generally pretty risk-averse people who make the decision.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair. That is. Wait, Kosmalski's 6'7"?
Yeah, he was a big man, I think.
I didn't know that. That is not a 6'7" name. Like he doesn't sound like he's 6'7". But yeah, good stuff on the Ivy League. If it's not like one of those names, is there like a quote unquote cheaper option?
Then who? A Penn?
Yeah.
Well, this is just me kind of deducing based on, you do this long enough and you get a sense of what people make, and then you get enough sources who talk to, because like let's just, for your listeners, break down how this goes. Search firms tell candidates and agents roughly what it's going to pay. That means that right off the bat, and then that spreads like wildfire throughout the kind of deep streets college basketball circles and comes back to me. And then if you kind of have a sense of what people make elsewhere and you just kind of use your brain, you can get a sense of like who the candidates in play are. Now, it doesn't mean that's always true. It's just so anyway, I should say like my indication is that Penn is not looking to spend what it would cost to lure a 5-time tournament entrant coach, right? Like that's what I'm saying. So what was the question? Who's the
who would be the cheaper option for Penn? Would it be
obviously any D3 guy is making less than $200,000 basically.
Yeah.
So if Penn is going to spend $500 or $600, they can just double the pay of any D3 guy. They can get I think like there was a little chatter of like Harris Adler, who's an assistant under Bruce Pearl, I believe, who has Philly ties. But the point is, like, whatever they're going to spend isn't enough to lure like a high level tournament coach, I don't think.
Okay. We've talked Ivy. I just want to get your thoughts on the Iona situation quickly because I thought that was crazy. What they did?
Yeah,
today.
Totally insane. Totally.
Tobin's won everywhere. He was doing a good job with this season. 13 new guys. They finished really strong. They're going to hire this. I already forgot his name. From the Pelicans.
Pelicans assistant. It's like Dan
Gario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played at Richmond back in the day. He's apparently pretty well liked. Kind of a really nice. It was very interesting. I started asking NBA sources and different people about him, and everybody was just like insinuating, not even insinuating, that has a weird connotation. They were just, the sense was he's a very socially, like sort of a high emotional intelligence, really charming, well liked, gets along well with.
Cover.
Say it again.
That'll be fun to cover.
No, but the point is, I think for me, what it revealed was, it's no secret, and I've been a huge fan of Tobin Anderson. I've been one of his biggest champions for a while.
He's a little kooky.
He's a basketball savant kind of guy. That's how he reads, right?
Yeah, he talks super fast. He has he definitely has like some form of ADHD.
No, I wouldn't say ADHD. I don't want to get too into ADHD. Often manifests itself in lots of ways. My point is, first of all, I'm loath to play armchair psychiatrist in this program, but no, he's just not like a suave sort of character. And I find that kind of endearing, and it makes me like him more to a degree. But he's a basketball obsessive. Like, you talk to people who've known him for years, and just watching him work a station at camps in the 90s and, watch what he did with D3 teams at Clarkson and whatever, way back in the day, wherever he was. He's a sort of just a ball coach's ball coach, right? Who's been a head coach for a long time. I think he's a coach's son from like Iowa. He went to Wesleyan, which is sort of they're actually really good this year. They're in the Final Four for D3, but it's
a regular season.
It's a very intellectual place, and he has a very interesting path, and it's not kind of like I can't imagine he was outstanding at rubbing shoulders and kind of doing golf outings with Iona donors. I just, West sort of Iona has Sam, you'd know better than I would, but it has kind of a homespun, insular, chummy kind of Westchester, New York City culture.
Very good business school.
But it's a place that's like, it doesn't, it's not a place that transcends its small community. And so if you don't connect with the right players and you don't win at the highest level, given that they're coming off of Pitino, I would just imagine that doesn't play well. What's really fucked up here is that it clearly was done well before the conference tournament even took place. So this probably gets done even if he wins the conference tournament. You know?
I mean, I'd been hearing this since back in February.
Well, I had been hearing at one point that Bobby Hurley was poking around when he was like maybe looking to get out of Arizona.
I heard
State.
that name too.
And I don't know how true that is, but certainly there was a lot of rumblings of just like it's not going great for Tobin. But then as I looked at the results, I was like, it seems to be going fine. Yeah, he hasn't crushed it, but toward the end of this year, they started winning and they made it to the conference final. And to me, in year 2, even if there's been some, because he did have a really bad year 1.
They were 8-5 and the best player quit.
But that's a bad year. Like
it is. It
retention and managing personnel is a big piece to this, right? But they finished poorly that year, right?
They did. They finished 10-10 and lost in the quarterfinals.
Right. For Iona, that's not going to get done. But that's fine. It's year 1. Who cares? Then year 2, it wasn't going great, but they got it together and made it all the way to the final. That's precisely what you need to see in terms of, like, for sure, keeping him for a third year. And given that it's the MAC, it's crazy to me that it's just unprecedented. I can't remember the last time a MAC coach was let go after 2 years, much less one who made a conference final.
Yeah.
I guess Carm at Siena got clipped a little bit early last year.
Yeah, but like they were 4-28. Like
right.
He coached 5 years. He'd never had a losing season before. Before and a
4-28 will do that. Like there are certain results that anywhere are just going to kind of raise enough eyebrows that they'll find the money to get rid of you. I'm sort of
that made a lot more sense than Tobin, and I still thought like he got a little. I still think that he got screwed over a little bit, and I think GMAC's going to be successful there. But I think I would have given Carm one more year if I were John Durden.
Yeah, I mean, but it's wild to me that that Tobin got clipped. It's really a bad.
I wouldn't want to take like if I'm considering Iona at that point. Why would you take that job?
I mean, because it's a good job. There's not that many of them. I think the disappointing thing to me, and I don't know anything about the guy. I'll try to learn more, so it's not about him. But it is also a great job for, like, if you're Joe Gallo or Chris Markwood at Maine, guys who are kind of at lower level D1 jobs in the Northeast. Iona's a great, or even Kamani Young or Luke Murray or something. I mean, Iona's considered kind of the best job in that league, right? And they're pretty committed, and there's always, every so often you hear murmurings that maybe they would go to the A10 or whatever. I mean, it sucks that a totally unproven assistant from the NBA gets that job. Just from a moving of the carousel perspective, that really sucks.
Yeah. Jonathan, do you have any?
This will not endear the Iona administration to the college basketball coaching community at all.
No, it would. And like, I like Matt Glavosky. He, the athletic director. I had conversations with him at the MAC tournament. I don't think that this move is because Glavosky thought Iona needed to move on. I think.
Who's Glavosky?
He's their athletic director.
Oh, you're talking about. So who's Matt Glavosky, the president?
No, Glavosky's the athletic director.
Wait, but then you said somebody else. You said two different names.
No, I didn't.
Oh, my bad. Carry on.
One name. I don't. Seamus Carey is the president at Iona. I mean, this was very clearly donor.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, are there any jobs that you want to discuss?
Well, I was just wondering if McCollum leaves, is there names that Drake already has in mind to replace him?
I don't know. Candidly, I don't know. I haven't thought yet about because it's only been 1 year there, so I haven't really thought about that. I think there was a guy on, who was it last year, on DeVries's staff, who then got a job. I want to say, was it at USC Upstate or something?
Richter, Marty Richter.
Yeah, where is he at? USC Upstate?
USC Upstate.
How did they do in year 1?
I don't think
they had a couple kids that were pretty solid. I don't think
Mr. Dean was really good.
Yeah,
you guys watch a lot of college basketball, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They finished 339th.
I just talked to coaching sources all day and I forget who's on it. I literally could name 50 players in the NCAA tournament. Maybe.
You could probably get what? How many of the VCU guys? That's probably the one you could.
I could name like assistant coaches on every team in the tournament.
Give me 2 assistant coaches at Akron.
No, that I do not know.
All right. Lipscomb.
Don't even know who their head coach is.
Lenny Acuff, former guest on Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers.
Good guy.
Great guy. He was the D2 coach at Alabama Huntsville.
Oh, I love that. I love that already. Maybe I'll tell him on the show tonight.
The current coach at Alabama Huntsville was, I don't know, they made a hire, and it seems like a really good hire last year because they lost Schulman. I forget which Schulman they was the
Jeremy Schulman.
It's either Jeremy or John. I think it was John.
Where did Jeremy go? East Carolina or something? No, that's somebody else.
Gardner Webb.
Oh, interesting.
Wait, hold on.
Jeremy's the UT Martin coach, isn't he?
Wait, one of them's at UT Martin, one of them's at Gardner Webb. Jeremy's at UT Martin. He was the
one guy was the JUCO coach in Florida.
Yes, that's Jeremy. And John Schulman, who's at Central Arkansas, that's where it is. Gardner Webb was Jeremy Luther. Oh my God.
Got it. All right, what else you got?
I mean, Jonathan, do you have anything here?
As a Duke fan, I want to ask if you know any. I don't know how much you know assistant coach searches and stuff like that.
I was actually talking to someone about that today who would know. No, I don't know who Shire is going to go after. I don't.
Yeah, because they are replacing Jay Lucas. So,
do you think there are any mid-major coaches that are looking to jump to a high major assistant role?
That's a good one.
I would. So it's hard to say for sure, and if I said as much, I have heard that Joe Gallo would do that, and I've heard that Sadler at Nichols would do that. Those are the only names that come to mind, but that's just a function of what different sources are hearing. And I would speculate that there are many, many, many others who would do that if they have the opportunity, for sure.
If you're a high major assistant, are there any mid-major coaches that you would make a call to that you think you could realistically get on your staff?
Wait, if you're a high major head, you mean?
Yeah, high major head.
Well, do we speak anymore in terms of low majors versus mid majors, or are we just calling everybody?
I just call everything a mid major.
All right. Okay.
I do feel like there is a gap, though.
I make a strong distinction between, let's say, conferences 6 through 11, let's say, or 10, and then 11 or 12 through 24 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
31.
31, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, the Mountain West, the Atlantic 10, the American,
WCC,
those are in a different category. And even like the top of the MAC, the MAC, and I mean, like there's a clear pecking order, right? Like the NEC, I've heard is half the teams are going to D3.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
So low major to high major as an assistant, you're asking?
Yeah, basically that.
Well, I mean, I was mentioning Gallo and the dude at Nichols are the ones that just I've heard over the last few months would do that. We saw it with Austin Clonch at Nichols a couple of years ago, who went to Alabama. I actually had heard at one point, and this was like astonishing, but I won't say the name, but there was a Sun Belt coach I heard that was seeking, like, I'll put it this way. After the Jay Lucas thing went down, there was head coaches in sort of Sun Belt like leagues, or at least one that I heard of, that would have been interested in taking that job. And it makes sense, right? The last guy went to get a high major job from there. So it's arguably easier to go from Duke's bench to a high major head job than it is to go from a mid major job. And so, yeah, I think for the right high major job, 100%, like lots of guys at all but the top 130 places would have to think long and hard about that. Probably pays better too.
Yeah, a lot of the high major assistant jobs, especially like a top assistant, is going to pay a decent amount.
Way more.
Jonathan, do you have any other jobs that you want to ask about?
I don't.
UNLV.
Yeah.
We had a really good UNLV guy on the show there. You guys should have him if you ever do that search. And he broke it down. And one of the things that's unique there is like they can kind of do a national search. I mean, nominally, ostensibly everybody can do a national search, but I think Vegas, you can fly there from anywhere. You can kind of recruit all over. So I don't think they have to limit themselves. I've heard Andy Kennedy trying to get his name in the mix, but he often does that at a lot of jobs. I've heard, I've suggested Eric Olin at UC San Diego. I've suggested, I think Chris Crutchfield at Omaha could be really good there. These are just kind of names I'm bandying about. I don't have a whole lot of sourcing on who's been in the mix there thus far, but I think it could be a wide range of candidates.
I was actually going to ask about Olin because it doesn't seem like there's a ton of West Coast jobs open that would be like a natural fit for him to move up.
Very true. I mean, I said he should go to Northwestern if Collins leaves.
UC San Diego is fairly high academic, right?
Very, very. And only
most
gotten
of the
harder.
UC schools are.
But UC San Diego, other than UCLA and Berkeley, I think it's the clear three now. And in a state with like 50 million kids and, incredible competition to get into those schools, it's very tough. And it's arguably, why he's done such a good job there, because they've had to recruit. Like, it's not a place, UCLA will get some kids in, you know what I mean? They don't do that at UCSD. So I think he would be a great fit at like a high academic and has recruited nationally.
Any, before we start to wrap this up, any jobs at the high major, mid major, low major level that you are surprised haven't opened or aren't opening?
I thought UCF would open. I thought that I was not surprised. I'm not surprised that Fordham hasn't opened. People said that. I always maintained it would not. I mean, I think Billy Lang did enough. I'm surprised it's not open only in the sense that 6 weeks ago I thought it might open, but he did enough to come back. So I'm not surprised by that. I think, let's see. Arizona State, I'm shocked, didn't open. I mean, like prior to the season, I thought Dartmouth was going to open, but then he just did a really good job, so it wasn't going to open. Am I missing any? Who are you guys thinking of?
Arizona State was the one that I had in mind.
Yeah. I mean, Fairfield, I think there were some people there hoping it would open, but I never.
There are more than just some people there hoping it would open.
Yeah.
My like when they lost, my mentions were completely flooded. Oh, Casey this, Casey that, Casey that. I'm gonna say like I there's not
It's wild to me that there's even that many Fairfield fans on the internet.
There's not a ton of buzz. There's not a ton of positive buzz about Chris Casey. Just
no, it was a stupid hire. He had one nice year in an interim capacity.
I mean, I feel like it made sense to give him the job. He earned the job. That doesn't necessarily mean he was the best hire for the job.
Correct. I fully agree. That's a good, concise way of saying it.
Yeah, I think like I've been thinking to myself, if they decide to pull the trigger and move on, which I don't think they would do at this point. We're way too late in the process for that. Like, that would be the perfect spot for Tobin.
For who?
For Tobin.
You don't think Kamani or Luke would be interested?
I mean, I think that you could definitely place a call. It depends how much you would pay.
Well, there was a rumor at one point, a perception even, that Fairfield, due to its new arena and just kind of an increased desire to be nationally competitive in athletics, was going to spend a bunch on basketball. I don't know if that was ever how true that ever was, and if it remains true now, or the extent to which it does. But I think when you open a new arena, you only get one shot at it, and if you don't nail it, it just becomes like, okay, cool building, I saw it twice, team sucks, I'm not going back. I'm not saying it's quite exactly like that, but I think they had a real window looking at it from afar, where it was like new arena, some buzz around the program. You guys you're one of the bigger endowments, if not the biggest in the league. There's some real networks there in terms of Wall Street and New York, and Fairfield has always been an underrated job on paper. But at a certain point, if you don't take the steps to build that infrastructure out, it doesn't really matter. And it seems like that window may have passed them by. Now, maybe that changes next year. They crush it again, and we're back here next year praising their hire. But I don't think they've done a good job at maximizing all that place can be.
And I think we were saying that 2 years ago about Quinnipiac.
Yep.
And then they cut budget. Dunleavy left, and they've won 2 MAC championships in a row with Tom Pecora, who was deemed damaged goods by the world 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's wild what they've done. You got to give him credit. I know there's a guy on that staff who's very well liked. Morris, I think is his name.
Yes, Sean Morris.
He gets a lot of buzz in my DMs from like different people.
Really?
But yeah, it's very random who I get buzz about. Like sometimes it's just.
I like Sean. I've never really talked with him, but everyone that does says that he's a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like I ever hear about MAC assistants, but that one I kind of do.
All right, we're about to hit the hour mark. So if there's anything burning, Jonathan, that you have,
I got a little more time. I mean, if you want to keep talking, do a little more.
I mean, I don't think we have anything that we need to go into.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I phrase this? Why hasn't Brian Wardle gotten a better job yet?
If you Google him and like the word controversy, there's a couple times he kicked that guy out of the press conference, and then I want to say, did he have a homophobic remark? Like, what did he say? I can't remember.
There was that issue with like Illinois State and Norfolk State last year, but like that obviously wasn't him.
That was Pete on.
I figured that's what you were going to say. I just wanted to make sure.
But there's been more than one, and I think it paints a picture of a guy with a bit of a flat affect who maybe isn't great at turning on the social graces. I just think also if you don't win the Valley and you aren't suave, it's just hard to get a better job than Bradley. Is it fair? No, but it's just kind of a reality when you think about a search firm putting 6 names in front of an AD, and if a guy has had a few moments that don't play well on the resume or whatever, but he's won 5 league titles, easy to overlook. But there's just so few jobs and so many good candidates that I think he and like John Becker and Russell Turner, and there's kind of a club of characters who are highly regarded for their basketball insights, but maybe just don't have that that the skill to land a gig. And I think that's a real thing. Like, you get in the room, you're a finalist, whatever, but they want something different. And I think he fits into that camp. I'm not saying that's deserved. I'm just noting reality based on how I've seen this play out over other years.
Got
it. Or there's guys who just don't win the league and are Pat Scary at Towson. Really hard job. He's gone so far in that league without a lot of money a bunch of times. It's just, where is he going to go? Like, where would Wardle go? Maybe, like, where would Wardle go? Would he go to Drake? Is that a substantially better job in the same league?
I wouldn't say it is.
Right. So where would he go? Like, where?
He would probably
would he go to Illinois if Brad Underwood got Texas? I doubt it.
Yeah, it would probably have to be some regional Big Ten job that maybe wasn't a super great Big Ten job.
Which is basically Minnesota, where I think Medved will get.
Medved, yeah.
All right. Sage, we thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the pod. Jonathan, would you like to take us home?
Yeah, if you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to listen to Search Season, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This has been Season 5, Episode 78 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. We'll see you next time.
Next time, tomorrow night, Jonathan's Bracket Bible Show with Quentin Corpuel.
Yes.